Hi, my name's David Limbrick. I'm a state member of Parliament for the Libertarian Party in Victoria. There's been tension brewing over a number of years now. It's to do with legislation around Indigenous owners of parks in Victoria and groups that have traditionally used these parks as well. And this has included many different types of park users. But one place where it's really come to a head is in the town of Natimuk in Victoria. Many people in this town are climbers that climb the nearby mountain of Mount Arapiles. And so I decided to go out to Natimuk and talk to some of the local people. And what you're going to see in this video is some of their stories.
It's the stunning country town that relies on tourism. If you're a hiker or rock climber, this is your happy place.
It's not just about rock climbing. This is a way bigger issue. It's about health. It's about education in rural Victoria.
They seem like reasonable people to me, and I wonder how many of the politicians making this decision have been to the town and actually spoken to those impacted.
Hi. Today I'm out in the town of Natimuk in the Wimmera region, and we've come out here to listen to local people and how these climbing bans have affected them on Mount Arapiles. Many of you that have been following me may be aware of what's been happening over the last few years. In fact, I first brought this issue up in 2019 when there was bans on the Grampians, and many people at the time said they were scared that this same thing would happen in Arapiles, and unfortunately it looks like that's happening. And one of the things that struck me when we came into the town was a sense of distress in the town. In fact, there's a sign when you come into town with a broken heart, which really had a big impact on me. But, lots of local businesses have signs saying save Natimuk. And I've got what I'm going to do today and tomorrow while we're out here is we're going to talk to some local people, and I want you to be able to hear the voices of people that are affected by this. These are real people in town. And someone that I'd like to introduce you to is Felix. Thank you for talking with me, Felix.
Thank you for coming down. As a community, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and so, Felix, you're a local doctor. Tell us about what you do and why you live in Natimuk.
Right, yeah, I'm a GP in Horsham and work 1 day a week here in Natimuk. I do mostly drug addiction, mental health, chronic pain, a bit of youth behavioural issues as well. So I'm one of the primary pharmacotherapy prescribers out in Western Victoria, I guess.
Yeah.
A desperately needed service.
Absolutely, yeah. We're very passionate about that too.
Yeah, great. Yeah. I was saying out here is there's a big lack of people that are able to provide that sort of service.
Yeah, I can understand. Yeah.
So we're quite busy, but I love living out here.
Yeah, it's a beautiful town.
And it's a beautiful community.
Yeah.
The people out in Wimmera are salt of the earth, hardworking, genuine, straightforward, welcoming, really, really down-to-earth, good people. The reason I came out here is for the rock climbers. So I've been coming to Mount Arapiles for, or Jura, as it probably should be called, for the last 17 years. And I came here on a school trip from Adelaide.
Right, wow.
Instantly fell in love with the place. It is my spiritual home. And I feel more connected to that mountain than anywhere else in the world. And I moved out to live here 3 years ago. I've been working out here since. And it is the reason why a lot of people move out to Wimmera. The biggest industry here is farming, and the second biggest industry is healthcare.
Yeah.
And it sort of goes to say that there's not many reasons for young professionals or young people or really anyone to move out this way and settle and contribute to the community. And without this mountain to attract people, the broader community is going to suffer significantly.
So this is something interesting because the government's spoken a lot about attracting professionals to regional areas in Victoria. And of course, you need some attraction, and this place has a great attraction, which is rock climbing for people who love it. One thing that struck me is when I've spoken with a lot of the rock climbers, they're professionals like yourself, so work in healthcare or other industries. What sort of effect do you think that will have on the future of this area if, this rock climbing is not, people aren't able to take it up, or it's much more limited than what it was before?
Yeah.
What sort of effect do you think that will have?
Oh, massive.
Yeah.
I don't think it is appreciated by lots of people how significant this is going to be to the entire Wimmera region, the community here. And I can paint a picture of the Wimmera. This is a desperately underserviced part of the country with some of the worst health statistics in Australia and some of the lowest rates of service providers and social supports around the country. It is, you could consider it a sort of forgotten corner of Australia, is it? And that's where we are at the moment. A lot of the professionals in town are rock climbers, so a lot of the teachers, the lawyers and legal aid, the nurses, the psychologists, we've got at least 5 doctors in the area who will come here for the climbing. These are all professions that are desperately needed out here. Without these bands, and given the rise in the popularity of rock climbing, and the number of people I've spoken to over the last 6 to 12 months have expressed interest in moving to this area, who would work and contribute to the community, who would be coming here to be close to the mountain, it is massive. Every week I'd speak to 3 or 4 people who would be expressing interest or plans to move here.
Wow.
And so what would have happened to this community, which, at the moment is desperately in need of young, hardworking people, we would have been flush with all these professionals. You go 5-10 years down the track and Wimmera would have been a completely different place to what it is now in terms of the resources and services that the locals can have access to. Now, that's not going to happen, and we're going to see people start to move away. Young professionals have already expressed interest and made plans to move away. I know of at least 2 doctors who had firm plans to come start working here who have now said they're not coming anymore. That is a massive impact to a community that only has, say, 20 GPs. That it makes the impact on the broader community is huge. Just in those couple of professionals, let alone what we stood to gain, and are now going to start losing. And let's say we lose a couple of doctors straight away, people are going to slowly trickle away. People that have already invested their time, bought properties, started businesses. Over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a downward slope rather than this amazing trajectory we were on this.
Yeah, and one of the things that strikes me is it just all seems so unnecessary because pretty much every rock climber that I've spoken to, they express a real willingness to, work with traditional owner groups, to care for these areas because they have, climbers have their own connections to these areas as well. And they want to care for it, they want to cooperate, and yet they haven't been really consulted on this. There hasn't been like a genuine attempt, I think, to connect with climbers and say, well, how can we work together to protect this and still maintain access for climbers and other parks users?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we're sitting on a reconciliatory goldmine here.
Yeah.
In terms of the population of owners and the sentiment they have towards cultural significance and wanting to protect that and encourage it and promote it. And what we do have here in terms of cultural significance, I think there could have been amazing opportunities to promote and protect.
Yeah.
And you're right, there's been really no engagement with the climbing community I told you.
And like from my point of view, I think this is a thing that really needs to change. There needs to be a more cooperative and collaborative approach here so that when you have competing uses for public land, that there is a better balance struck, because clearly the balance at the moment isn't right, and people who've invested a large part of their lives and their money and their time and businesses to live in this area, to just have the rug pulled out from under them doesn't seem right.
Oh, it's devastating. And, I can't speak to any specific clinical examples, but the mental health impact of this draft plan has been astronomical. People have surround their lives around this mountain, not just the people that live here and moved here for it, but people around the country, the world, Mount Arapiles and Jurite as their spiritual home. And like I said, I can't speak to any specific incidences that have happened, but they've been pretty much as bad as it can get in terms of how this has impacted the mental health of the climbing community. So absolutely, this has been terrible. And we also hear stories about the impact this has had on the traditional owners and local Indigenous people, and how this plan by Pikes Victoria has driven a wedge between people and generated and fueled animosity between communities. I mean, ever since I first saw Jurite and was able to go rock climbing there, I've been, essentially obsessed with it since. I think that by definition, spirituality is ineffable, and I don't think I could put into words what Jurite means to me. But I love it. It's where I go to recuperate and rest and energize. I've been back and forth there for most of my life, and I've used it as a source of healing, connection, and purpose, and still use that to enable me to do the work I do. I can't put it into words, but the meaning behind it is, it goes beyond words.
Yeah, so what's it like to be part of a community that shares that same sort of connection and that spiritual connection to an activity and place like you've just mentioned?
Oh, I wouldn't know how to describe it. Life-changing. And, I think a good example is, there are so many people that have found that community and used it as a way to escape and heal and move away from very unhealthy places in their life. I mean, there's lots of people in the climbing community that have come from severe mental health illness and addiction, and used climbing and the climbing community particularly to bring yourself out of that. And, the climbing community is a very welcoming, wholesome, healthy, motivated and interconnected group of people that wrap themselves around connection to nature. And pretty much this mountain, Mount Jurite, is the mecca of climbing in Australia, if not the world.
Wow.
And, the climbing community is completely dedicated to that. And being part of that it's beautiful. And Natimuk is a amazing town. I live within 200 meters of 50 friends, and I feel so privileged and blessed to have that sort of experience in life. And it's because of climbing and access to such beautiful landscapes like Jurite.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Yeah, look, I mean, thank you so much for sharing your story. And let's hope that we can get, these stories out to more people so that people understand that the people that live here in Natimuk really want to cooperate and work with people to get a better solution.
So after we talked to Felix, we had a nice steak at the pub and talked to lots of different people. And of course, we can't go all the way out here to Natimuk without actually going to Arapiles. So very early the next morning, we drove out to Arapiles to see what it's all about.
Well, here we are. I'm sort of halfway up a mountain at Arapiles at the moment, and our friend Ziggy has taken us up. You can say hi. And as you can see, it's absolutely beautiful. I was down at the pub in Natimuk last night, and I must have had a couple of beers, and someone said, you got to go climbing tomorrow, and I think I must have been a bit pissed, so I agreed. So anyway, here I am. I'm going to try and climb up this wall.
37-degree day.
On a 37-degree day. They tell me that it's easy, but I'm looking at it and it doesn't really look that easy at all to me. But we'll see how we go, I suppose. But look, you can certainly see why people love this area. It's absolutely beautiful out here, and the sky at the moment is blue. If you look out here, you can see over all the farmland. We saw when we were driving in, they were harvesting wheat, I think, and it was just absolutely beautiful. It was a really nice drive up here. And so I'm going to try climbing today. Let's see how I go. Of course, after seeing Ziggy whiz up the mountain, it was my turn, and I haven't actually done climbing since I was in high school, and I wasn't really ready for it because, as you can see, I'm wearing jeans here, and it was a 37-degree day, and I could barely stand up. It was so hot, but I had a crack at it, and it was pretty cool. I didn't make it all the way to the top, but I certainly got a taste of
how it's cool. It's not just a physical activity, it's also like a problem-solving activity, and I can definitely see the attraction in it. Aside from being such a beautiful area and being in the outdoors, it's just fantastic. So I can definitely see why people love it.
Hi, I'm with Ziggy at the moment, and he's going to show us how you climb without actually damaging the rock.
Yeah, so there is this misconception about climbing that we're all going around drilling these holes in, and Arapiles is predominantly a traditional climbing crag. So what that means is we're using pieces of equipment that we actually place into the rock in natural features, and we just into that protecting ourselves. But we also get to remove those pieces. So I'll give it a quick demonstration. So this will just be on your belt. Find a piece. And theoretically, that will hold you. Climb past it. Remove the gear.
I'm down at the Pines, which is at the base of Arapiles. I've just had a little taste of the climbing. My staff and we went out with Ziggy before, and I had a talk earlier with Zorba, who I met a bit earlier, and Zorba's been staying here for a long time. He had a great little campsite here. It's really comfortable. I was saying I could sit here all day, but so Zorba, what's this place mean to you? And like, how does it? What do you think about what people have been talking about with potential restrictions and things like this?
Yeah, Arapiles is the sort of one of the origin points of modern rock climbing, as we understand it.
Mm-hmm.
The objective of starting at the base of a piece of rock and getting to the top of it. When people first started here in the 50s, there was no dynamic rope, which means the rope stretches. They were using old hemp rope.
Right.
They would tie it around their hips. If you fell while leading in that style, you were going to get seriously injured.
Mm.
What Arapiles offered those young early explorers was a way to get to the top of the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the early cliffs here, you can get to the top without climbing the cliff, and you can throw your rope down, and you can train it multiple times, top roping it. Because if you fall on a top rope, you don't have a dynamic fall, you don't break your back. Right? Then we invented dynamic ropes, and then people here like H.B. Matheson and I always get his name wrong, but RP, they started inventing traditional gear, nuts on slings and things to put into cracks.
We got some video of that before to show how it works to people, yeah.
That didn't exist.
Yeah, right.
In the 60s. In the early 60s, the guys climbing here went, I'll just get a nut out of me toolbox and I'll crack a sling through that, pop it in there, and she'll be right, mate.
Yeah.
They did in this great old 1980s video of people doing that here for the ABC. There's a great episode of that.
Yeah, right. I have to check it out.
Equipment.
Yeah.
Right? And it started to, so not only is this an origin site of climbing in the world, there's only a handful, there's only like 10 true origin sites of modern rock climbing in the world. Well, like Yosemite here, some other places people don't really know about that are more obscure, but this is one of a handful of places in the world where modern rock climbing was born. And it's because of the rock type.
Yeah.
The land made the climbing. Climbers didn't come here and see a big pile of rocks and go, oh, we'll chip this and we'll move that around and we'll fix this and we'll build the wall. No, it was perfect. They found it and they said, this is perfect for what we need to do. And
there's lots of natural places to hold, and I saw that myself.
Outside, it's 8 on the Mohs scale.
Yeah.
You know, the things I could tell you about this rock, like down to intimate little details of like rocks that got chipped off on this year at this date and being tried to be replaced because to replicate the hold that it used to be. And we have whole stories in this community about stuff like that. It's anarchy in its true form. It's non-coercive, consent-based rules. Everyone ties their figure 8 the same way. Why? Because that's the strongest knot. Right? You might do a bow line for different reasons, but 80% of people, when they tie in, they'll use a figure eight. And if you're talking to old guys who aren't dead and they say, hey, do this way and this is why, you don't have to do it. You can do it any other way you like. But almost certainly their way is going to be, and if you listen to them, you'll probably live longer and have a better day. And so we do, and we form these consensus. And here, there's strong consensus, there's violent consensus around certain things. And if you go against the consensus, boy, do you feel it from the community. Internally, we get a lot of pushback from people for doing stuff that will make us look bad as a whole or is against the ethic of the rock here. Like putting bolts in where you don't need them, that'll get you, people yell at you in the streets. Sorry, back to the dirt bag. So the dirt bag is basically the person who becomes so obsessed with climbing that everything else like goes away. And they're almost treated like monks, because the thing is about those guys, when things go wrong, they might just be on a ledge over there. They're just cruising around doing their thing, having a happy day by themselves. And all of a sudden they hear help and they're like, hey buddy, what's going on? They're like, I dropped my rope down there. I'm halfway up a mountain. I'm like, don't worry, I'll go get it. So they're like these mountain fairies, right? But they're always dirty. They don't shower. They never have food. They're eating rotten scraps. They froth when they find a half-eaten sandwich at a restaurant near the top. They starve out there. They just don't, the suffering is worth it. And it creates a physical ability in a person to just endure anything. Right. So the dirt bags, you have a good crew of dirtbags in town, like people who have lived this for years this way, and they are solid. You can do anything with them. You want to go up and do anything. Hardest thing here, and they're up for it. They're up. They'll bring a boom box and a esky with them. They'll make a party of it. Like it's no trouble to get up to any place here. It's home. But and tell you, like there are routes here. I can literally close my eyes and tell you every move you have to make up 110 meters of rock. You put your foot here, and then you move your hand there, and then you do this, and then you stand like that. And you become a part of the place. And for someone outside in Canberra or somewhere else who hasn't spent that time on country to come here and tell us what our rules need to be when we've spent 65 years getting broken and beaten and dying up here to learn our rules, we're like, buddy, come spend a month with us. Just spend at least a week with us and come climbing. And then maybe you'll understand a bit why this matters. Without this place, all the other climbing places in Australia will go away.
And can I ask you just quickly, like in a couple of sentences, if you were what's your message to the state government? Like, what do you want them to do or not do? Like if you have a message to them.
So what I think, what my walk away points are, is that the existing community-based organisations like Track Care, Cliff Care, Crag Stewards, ACAV, anyone that has an active involvement over the past 10, 20, 30, 60 years of traditional, of usage of this place as a climbing training ground and centre, that those organisations that are already incorporated, already have charitable status, have been long-standing in their care of flora, fauna and tracks, that they be formally recognised by the Parks Management Plan and included in the active...
In the consultation and stuff.
Not even like, if anybody's going to mess with that track, right? There's two tracks, one up Central Gully and one up Ferris Gully. That took 100 people over several years of like monthly dragging rocks up to the top and having Walter carefully craft them into a path up the most optimal line. Now, state parks have a map, and there's a surveyed line from the 70s that follows the water gully. If you put a track, and that's the suggestion, is to remove the track that volunteers have put there, because that's not in the approved location that the 1970 surveyor thought was a good track, and they want to place it in the water gully run line that's no use to anyone, and it's going to erode terribly, and they're going to come in with diggers and concrete because they don't have the time, money, patience to do a proper masonry job of the track. So they're going to destroy a work of art that was built by volunteers they're going to ignore that these volunteer organisations have been here all along and say they're vandals when they're the only ones that have restored the vegetation to the way it is, right? I don't want them consulted. I want them to be active parts of the park management, as they have been for 65 years. I don't want any authority. I want recognition. The authority vests in the people doing the work.
All right. So I met Glenn last night at the Natimuk, at the hotel, at the Natty, where I had a steak and a beer. But Glenn, you've got an interesting story as well. So why don't you tell us a bit about your background and what's your relationship to the area here?
I started coming here in the very late 70s, and I actually took one look at it and cried. I thought, what a pile of chaos. And then, because my background, I came from the Blue Mountains, beautiful orange.
Yeah.
Was.
Yeah. Been there a few times, yeah.
Yeah. And then you look at this and you think it's never going to hold together. It's loose, but it's turned out to be one of the most important rock climbing areas in the world.
Yeah.
One of the top 10.
Yeah.
It's solid. There are loose blocks. The gear's good. There's only a number of climbing areas you can actually live in. Yosemite has restrictions now. Joshua Tree's got restrictions. This is one of the main areas you can come and stay, and I stayed here for 11 years.
So in the pines?
Yep.
Yep.
And it was covered in pines. A lot of them are gone now. It was a beautiful sheltered area, and really bleak winters we'd escape. We'd go to Queensland for the winter and then come back. But yeah, most of us would drift in and out, going on mountaineering expeditions, things like that, climbing overseas. So we experienced all these other areas, but we'd always come back here. A lot of us were very young, so this was a place of shelter for us. A lot of us were running away from something, dysfunctional families, abuse, all the rest of it. And at any one time, there was 20 to 30 of us, all in our teens, living here permanently.
So how old were you when you lived here?
I started living here at 18.
Yeah, right.
And I was here right through the 80s and left in 91.
Okay. Yeah. And so what have you done since then that's related and like your connection to this area now?
Well, I actually live in North Wales now.
Yes.
So I come here for 6 months. I come back to Arapiles. I take the occasional climbing shots for the guidebooks and things like that.
Yep. So photography, you mean?
Photography, yeah, sorry. Yeah. And it never leaves you. You can leave it, but it always draws you back.
One of the things that you said to me at the pub last night, and this is important for tourism in Victoria, is you said that there's a general perception overseas that because of these bans, and they like at the Grampians and some of the proposed ones at Arapiles, that many people are making a decision not to come here, and you're trying to tell people, well, actually you can still climb, and
yes, absolutely.
So tell us a bit about that.
Right. So living in North Wales, everybody that's interested or has been here, interested in coming, they always say, is Arapiles closed? Because a lot of the media overseas are saying it's all over.
Yeah.
You can't climb here at all.
Yeah.
Bad.
It's not over yet.
Certainly not over. There's still 50% of Arapiles that you can climb on. So you'd be coming for the experience. But in their way of thinking, what they're led to believe overseas is that all the Grampians is closed, that's Stapleton, Taipan, Wall, all the rest of it, and all of Arapiles is closed. So they're not going to jump on a plane for 30 hours, pay a huge amount of money to get here and just sit about and do nothing.
So do you think the state government's their tourism messaging overseas needs some work?
It
sounds like
does, yeah.
So would that be your message to the state government in that you have a real, like it seems like a real valuable international tourism asset? I've met a lot of people up the mountain today. They're clearly, foreigners. They've come here just to go climbing. And it seems like this image that the government has sort of let run wild overseas amongst the climbing community has sort of dampened tourism. And, given the economic state in Victoria at the moment, that's the last thing we want is people deciding not to come here.
Yes, indeed.
So would that be, what message would you want to give to the government about that?
I would recommend that the government work with climbing media hubs, the podcasts, the magazines.
Yeah, because there's a big sort of network, right?
Huge.
Yeah.
The government needs to work with them, or at least take control and contact them and clarify the situation.
So like maybe get a government representative or a minister or something on those shows to tell them, here's what the actual situation
Absolutely.
is. Here's the government's intentions. And make it clear what you can and can't do. That actually sounds like really helpful feedback. And I'll make sure that the government hears that.
Excellent. One of my missions, because Arapiles meant so much to us, I'd like to put something back. So I've come from North Wales. I'll be living out here some of the time, in Natimuk most of it, while I'm here. And my job, well, my mission is to go back to Britain, do the podcast, do the magazines and the forums, and just clarify the situation.
Great. Thanks so much for talking with me.
No problems at all. Thank
you. Cheers. So I'm back at the Natty pub after had a go at climbing Arapiles earlier and talking to some people down at the campsite at the Pines. And last night we talked to heaps of locals here about, how this is all affecting the local town. But who better to talk to than Bill, who is the owner of the Natty pub, and hear about what he's got to say. So, Bill, thanks for talking with us.
No worries at all.
Yeah. So, tell us, what's the story here? Firstly, about the Natty pub. When did you start running it, and what's your story?
About 14 years ago.
Yeah.
We come to take over the pub.
Yeah.
After coaching the footy side back in 1979, 80.
Right.
And a couple of years after that. So
great.
We knew a lot of the locals in the town. And
where'd you come from?
I'm originally from Maryborough.
Yeah.
But we were living in Horsham.
Right.
Been in Horsham for about 35 years.
Great.
So, good area.
Yeah, that's a nice pub. I had one of your steaks last night. It was a nice steak with the cheese and bacon on it. Yeah.
Steak Arapiles.
Yeah, that was good. With the curly chips. And so you've been running the pub for 14 years. Obviously, this must have had an impact on the town, and you talk to everyone, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, there's the old pub test, isn't it?
The pub test, yeah.
And everyone that comes in now is discussing about the possible closure of certain areas and how it'll affect it. I mean, from a bit
signs over here, and
there's
even a petition from Parliament on the counter,
ready to go as we're getting the numbers up and up. So to get some time there. But look, one of the things from our point of view, that would probably drop our business by around the 45% mark.
Wow,
which is a fair amount in turnover terms.
Yeah, of course.
We employ close to 30 people, and a lot of those are kids. So it saves mum and dad going into Safeway or KFC or Macca's, wherever it may be.
Because it's about, I don't know, I think it's about 20-minute drive.
20-minute drive, yeah. So, but apart from that, it's just, as we had a discussion earlier on about, that it's just not the amount from the point of view of climbing. You've got families that go up there for picnics, or people train a lot of their sport up there. I don't know if you know Jake Lloyd, who plays for Sydney. spent his youth running up and down the mount.
Did he really?
To get
you get strong legs doing that. I did a little bit of it, and I wasn't running, but there's a lot of rocks there. You'd want to have strong feet.
Yeah. You got to watch your way on the way up and on the way down.
Yeah.
But, from the point of view of the climbers, they look after the place. They've always looked after it.
Yeah.
And
didn't see a skerrick of rubbish around the campsite.
No, which is amazing because Parks pulled out all the rubbish bins.
Yeah, right.
To save $9,000.
Okay, yeah.
But they can spend $1.7 million on updating facilities.
Yeah.
And, of course, that's caused problems within town, with the council having to supply bins and then empty all the bins because the bins were overflowing all the time.
Right. So Parks Victoria's taking out the bins and then the council's taking up the slack.
Yeah, here in town.
Yeah, right.
So,
and then the ratepayers are paying for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's, to save $9,000.
So an interesting point that was made to me, and we noticed it when we went up there and we're talking to people, there's a lot of people that, like international tourists, right, who come here to climb. And the point that was made to me is that a lot of people internationally sort of have this view that, climbing's shut down and it's not, but like they have this view that it is and they choose not to come here and they go somewhere else. Have you seen a decline in
international visitors?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I would say.
Where do they normally come from?
All over the world.
All over the place.
We had, for example, the New Zealand Army come and stayed here and they do a leadership course out there. So they have fellows.
So it's actually run by the military.
Yeah. So that they come out and they use it as a leadership course where they put them under pressure to see how they react because none of the fellows that actually climb. So they're trying to organise and see how they really go under pressure.
Yeah, yeah. We got a little taste of that today. How difficult it can be. It's pretty hot up there on the rocks today, I can tell you.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. Like again, we spoke earlier that I've climbed a couple of times, and it's a bit of a unique thing. Yeah, I'm not great with heights, but then you go, oh, geez, what happens if I fall here?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the international visitors have certainly dropped off. You get a lot from America.
Yeah.
A lot from New Zealand. We have people that book in each year.
Yeah.
Stay here for a couple of weeks.
So they stay in your pub or just
stay in the cabins. We've got 5 cabins out the back.
Yeah, right.
So, and they'll stay here for a couple of weeks and then head back to NZ. But we've met people from all over the world.
Yeah. And what sort of impact does that have? Like you said, maybe you estimate maybe a 40% drop in turnover if these visitors aren't coming. What does that mean for the pub? Because pubs are set, there's only one pub in town, I think.
Yeah, it's only one.
So I saw last night a taste of it. It's like it's a community hub, right? People come here and they chat, they meet their mates, they have a meal, have a beer or whatever. But what does that mean for the future of the pub?
Well, there may be not a future for the pub. That's one of the things. I suppose it'll be sort of a bit of a lemon. You just suck it and see what actually happens. But it would make a big difference, no doubt. Especially for Easter, for example, you'd have close on 2,000 people would visit the mount. You can't see any spare ground in the pines, for example.
Yeah, they were telling me that around Easter and around Christmas and that it'll be totally packed.
Yeah, and then you'll go into January and February when it's really hot and there'll be maybe 1 or 2 people there.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So, it's sort of a bit weather driven as well.
And so if you had a message to the Victorian government, what would your key message be to them? What would you want to say to them and listen to help what's going on here in Natimuk and Arapiles?
I'd say the old story is listen to the people who may have put you in because they will make sure that you're not in next time.
Well, I like that. All right. That's a great way to finish. So thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
I really appreciate it.
Fantastic.
Cheers. So I'm at the Arapiles Mountain Shop. We've just been to the pub earlier, and earlier in the day we went up and had a bit of a climb. But I'm speaking with Wayne, who runs the shop, and tell us a bit about your shop and what do you sell here? Like, obviously it's climbing gear, but yeah.
Shop's been here since '89.
Yep.
Yeah, so...
Were you the owner the whole time? No?
No, I've only recently just bought it in the last 2 years. It was basically the climbing company, which was a bunch of climbers who started a guiding company. They also wanted to get some cheap gear, so they thought they'd start a shop.
Yeah, right.
And so it's been there that long. And yeah, as I said, I recently bought it 2 years ago, and we basically cater for all the climbers who internationals. They seem to have just dried up, actually.
Yeah, right.
It was COVID, really. We didn't see them for,
of course,
ages, except the ones that were stuck here.
Yeah.
And then the last 18 months, it really felt like internationals were starting to come back. But I've just heard a few stories, and I've actually talked to a few people who called from overseas, and a lot of people are under the impression that it's done, it's banned. And the Grampians got gutted in the last round of closures, with most of the climbing, like the vast majority of it getting closed. And it's also a world-class climbing area.
Yeah.
And a lot of the Grampians closures are based on cultural heritage that might be there. And so they need to survey it first. And these surveys are taking, obviously, we're 4 or 5 years in and they still haven't been finished. So do we close the whole of Victoria just in case there's cultural heritage and only open it once we survey it? It's just... Yeah, no, the effects are getting larger and larger. And, like, this was just dropped on us, like, out of nowhere. There was a few murmurs in the previous weeks from connections that something was coming. I order climbing shoes 12 months in advance. And you're talking upwards of sort of 150 to 200 grand worth of climbing shoes that I've got to forecast because it comes from Europe.
Yeah.
So for me not to get at least a 12-month warning, it's like, I could be not be able to pay for the stock that's coming, basically, if things get really bad.
And what's your fear? What will happen next year? Like if these bans come into effect, what sort of effect do you think that'll have on the business?
I don't know. It's really a bit of an unknown. I've been really trying in the last, since the ban's got announced, I've been really trying to concentrate on online business as a safeguard, but
to get an extra revenue stream. Yeah.
Well, and just in case I get stuck with stock.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't like online business. It's I love my online customers, obviously, but it's a lot harder. The margins are slimmer. It's not face-to-face. I enjoy just talking to people. So there's not that. So my fears are, well, I don't know. Yeah, it could be anywhere from it's not too bad to I don't have a business anymore. I don't have a way of life.
So it's like a real lack of certainty in what's going to happen, because we don't even know like what's going to go ahead, right?
We don't know what's going to go ahead. There's no clear timeline that we've been put out. There's this consultation period, but normally consultation, I would think, would be talking to people before you write a plan.
Yes, yeah.
Telling me what the plan's going to involve, is that just a period where I just get to digest it?
Yeah, we call that consultold. You get consultold.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We just call it CON with apostrophes around the edge of it, consultation.
Yeah, right.
It was the con of consultation.
Yeah. So if you've got, like, if you wanted to say a message to the Victorian government, what would your key message to them or key concern that you would want them to address be?
This is greater than climbing. It's a public access issue. Like, if you look at what's going on here, the climbers still have climbing, even though I think that's been poorly done as well. But the rest of the park is actually closed. So it's greater than rock climbing. And I think this is the tip of a a spear that a lot of Victorians are becoming more and more unhappy with. The vibe I get from climbers elsewhere, especially like northeast Victoria, they're scared about other stuff as well, because a lot of those guys are mountain bikers, are skiers, and they're worried about where does this stop. It's access for everyone. For people to appreciate nature and natural spaces, you have to let them interact with them, not look at them from a distance like a museum, because if you interact with them, you learn to appreciate them. So
we certainly noticed when we went up there, like, you know, one thing, you know, sometimes in campsites, there's a bit of rubbish and stuff. Like, I think it was spotless when we went up there before. I didn't see a skerrick of rubbish anywhere. And, like, you get the impression when you talk to people that they really do care for the whole area. You know, like they love the place, right? So they want to look after it as best they can.
Oh, I'm deeply connected to the place. I've lived in the campground for 2 years of my life.
Yeah, right.
You see rubbish floating around, and rubbish always gets away. Climbers, as a general rule, even though we've been demonised by parks with grampians, we clean up, we're environmentalists. The countless hours we've spent re-vegging the place. I don't know. It's worth having a look at some photos from Mount Arapiles from the 1970s.
Yeah, right.
Just as climbers got there, it was a wasteland.
Yeah, right.
And
why was that?
Well, there's grazing right up to the base. You could drive your car right up to the base.
Right.
And
because there's lots of good vegetation there now.
Oh, you used to be able to sit in the campground and look out at the boulder field and see who's on a boulder. You can't even see the boulders anymore. Like, there's native wildflowers that, like, we
I saw heaps of them earlier today.
Yeah, and you've missed the good time.
Yeah, right.
You're here a few months ago. There's like 30 different species of orchids there.
Right. Wow.
So it's very special. Climbers, as a general rule, we're all about low impact. Most of us have always voted left, and we've been what the locals would call us greenies. So that's what I don't get about this. We're a user group who really, really deeply cares about the place, yet the land council, the local land council, won't come and sit down and talk to us. And they call us racist and et cetera, but we're not. Like,
no, I haven't seen any evidence of it.
A lot of my mates have gone and worked in Central Australia and help with Indigenous communities, and like, we're so far from racist. Like, it's actually brought a lot of division into our community because we feel like we're getting put into this box that we're not. And by making this an issue, the general feeling is it's us versus them, and we've never wanted that.
It hurts to get. It must hurt to get, like, boxed in like that, like you say. And, like, especially when the general consensus from most people that I've spoken to is that they want to work with people to protect cultural heritage. They're willing to do this, but, like, the balance is wrong, is the general message I've been hearing.
There's no balance.
There's no balance at all, yeah.
So, because it was actually climbers in the 90s who started the first surveys, got them going, and took the surveyors to spots at Arapiles to show them where we'd found things. And there's one little area where there was some climbing in the early days on it, and once it was surveyed, it's like we self-policed ourselves and have not gone near that site and most of the damage on that site was actually pre-climbing. It was just the 100 years before climbing, where people would go out there and have a fire. And so, yeah, I just feel like during the Grampians ban, parks, which it's been proved now, parks actually put a smear campaign against climbers.
I was very disappointed with what happened like, we were involved in it back in 2019 when this all was brought to my attention. It was an issue that I wasn't really familiar with.
Yeah.
But I heard the way that climbers were smeared, and after I'd met lots of climbers after that, I was like, this doesn't add up. Like, it's not right.
Well, it was proven, like, bolts that were apparently our bolts in artwork that were actually Parks' bolts. Spray painting on the cliff that was never found out who did it, but it was obviously a bunch of teenagers from Stawell.
Yeah.
Who just come and do what teenagers do sometimes. Rubbish, a lot of the time the rubbish photos were at tourist car parks.
Yeah.
And if anyone doesn't care for the environment, a lot of the time tourists can be quite, well, bad.
Yeah.
And that's a generalisation. But
yeah, of course.
Yeah, you need a few bad apples. And then it's like the Grampians, they tell us it's going to be shut until further notice because we don't know where the cultural values are. And 5 years down the track, it's still shut. Imagine if they shut all the beaches in Victoria, no one's allowed to go till we do cultural heritage surveys. The uproar would be crazy.
Yeah, it would.
And this is in effect what they've done in the Grampians.
Yeah. Well, we're going to keep doing what we can to make the government listen on this. I think there's a lot of stories that we've heard since we've come up here, and actually some people have made some really good suggestions. I think one of the suggestions I've heard was, and the issue that you brought up as well, was around foreign tourists don't know that things are still open. I think the government needs to do something about that because that's just misinformation being able to be spread, right?
Well, they think it's closed, and because you've lost the Grampians, so you've lost... I've always said the Grampians and Arapiles are two of the best climbing areas in the world. In the top 10, they're two of them. And they're here in this one spot, and the government has just gutted Victoria climbing. And because you're missing those draw cards, people aren't even putting Australia on the map anymore as a destination to come climbing.
Which is sad.
Which is really sad, considering that's a bunch of low-impact user groups who bring a lot to the area. A lot of them end up... A lot of people who live in town have been those tourists. And they live here.
I've met some of them, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a real shame because climbers, to the local Wimmera community, climbers bring a lot of skills, professions. It used to be less so because it was really hard for the really skillful people to move outside of the major cities. But now, since COVID, it seems there's more flexibility. So, I've got 3 kids at school. There's umpteen teachers at Wimmera College, and they've still got staff shortages. And a bunch of those are climbers, and eventually people will leave. And Natimuk's, you go 100 k's north, and a lot of the little towns are slowly getting smaller and smaller. Natimuk's one of the few places that's completely bucked the trend. So I think it's not just about rock climbing. This is a way bigger issue. It's about health. It's about education in rural Victoria. And it feels like, because we're in a safe national seat, one of the safest seats in the country, it feels like we're a sacrificial lamb to the government.
It's not a good feeling.
Nope, not at all.
Thanks so much for talking with us.
No worries. Thanks, David.
Cheers. Thank you to everyone that spoke with me on our recent trip to Natimuk. I hope that you enjoyed listening to these stories. The reason that I went up there to talk to these people is because I was getting so many contacts via email with people telling me their personal stories. And I think talking to the locals drove home one key point, is that the serious effect that this is going to have on the local town, well outside of just climbing. These people are workers in the local community. They work in healthcare, they work in education, lots of different areas. And I think that this is going to have a far wider effect than anyone thinks if climbing will be shut down like this. I know that there's been changes recently to, Parks Victoria, and the government's been paying more attention to this, which is a good thing. So I suppose we'll just have to wait and see how that process actually plays out. But I think as part of a wider issue, there's lots of parks users for all different purposes who are concerned at the moment. And I think the government really needs to get something more reasonable and balanced happening at Arapiles to demonstrate that it is possible to come to a reasonable balance in parks access and balancing these different concerns. Otherwise, we're going to have these sorts of problems all over the state. So I'll continue to fight for public access to public land, and I'll continue to put pressure on the government to come to a more reasonable solution here. And let's wait and see what happens in the short term, because I think that I'm hopeful that we might see a change of course here under the new leadership from Parks Victoria, and the government seems to be making some hopeful noises. So let's wait and see how that actually plays out.